How does a prime beachfront property in the Canary Islands end up in the hands of big corporations, even when some homeowners fiercely resist selling? Why do these real estate funds target properties in such ways? And what drives their motivations? And most importantly, how can you protect your ownership without being forced to sell? We'll dive into the harsh reality of property neglect and what it really costs. Here, high-end design meets reality.
Lack of maintenance, a very expensive flaw.
Picture this, a coastal community on the sunny shores of Lanzarote in the Canary Islands. The view? Stunning. The lifestyle? Ideal. But behind the facade of this beachfront paradise, a disaster is unfolding. One of the buildings, proudly standing as luxury escapes for many, is suffering from something insidious. Structural decay, creeping in from beneath. Now, I won't reveal the exact location out of respect for the residents' privacy, but let's dive into what's happening.
Slow motion ruins of some buildings.
The data paints an incredible picture. A 2019 study by the Federal Reserve Bank of Philadelphia shows that the US average repair costs for older units owned by low-income homeowners can surpass $2,000, with much of this going toward structural issues. Nationally, repairing all housing deficiencies in 2018 would have cost $126 billion, $3,000 per household on average. Now we are traveling far away, to a different continent, in a neighborhood where obviously there are no financial problems for maintenance. In the coast of Lanzarote, the problem begins underground, where saline waters seep through the foundations, carrying a silent threat to the building's steel reinforcement. Concrete structures, especially near the sea, rely heavily on these steel bars to remain stable. When the salt water corrodes the steel, the integrity of the entire building is at risk. Over time, the steel loses its concrete protective coating, leaving it vulnerable. Without maintenance, the corrosion progresses until the steel becomes fragile, more like dust than a solid load-bearing material. And when that happens, even concrete can't save the structure. Now, what's fascinating and terrifying about reinforced concrete buildings is that in a worst-case scenario, they buy you some time. Even if the concrete cracks, the steel frame holds everything together long enough for evacuation. But once that steel corrodes beyond repair, it's game over. No architect or material engineer in their right mind would risk their reputation trying to fix it. This is exactly what's happening to these beachside homes. If nothing is done, in 20 years, half of them might have to be evacuated and demolished. And the issue isn't unique to this location. It's a harsh reality many properties face when proper maintenance is ignored. As costs escalate, what might seem like a manageable issue today becomes a monstrous expense tomorrow. And if these problems aren't addressed soon, the buildings, once beacons of luxury, will end up as little more than costly ruins waiting to be snatched up by opportunistic real estate vultures. Here comes the worst part.
The hand that slowly feeds your building.
A 2023 report by the US Department of Housing reveals that 8.53 million households faced worst-case housing needs in 2021, a rise of 760,000 cases since 2019. This escalating crisis echoes previous heights, such as 2011's 8.5 million cases, showing a steady growth. These US studies highlight how economically vulnerable households, typically renters, are disproportionately impacted by building neglect, often directly or indirectly attributing blame to landlords for their lack of upkeep. But if we look at other countries like Spain, one of the largest markets for small property owners in the world, where new construction meets high European quality standards, we'll see that maintenance deficiencies show similar statistics regardless of whether the properties are rentals or not, and irrespective of the owner's financial means. This means that wherever there are opportunistic companies to make aggressive offers to buy lands or buildings, there are many aspects to improve those real estate assets. If this rule holds true, maintaining our buildings and managing our owners' associations efficiently might be the smartest move to showcase to the market that you are a proud owner. This way, if selling is on the table, we'll be able to name our price because the property has real value and there's no legal weak spot forcing us to sell. When we reach the point where building owners can no longer afford the repair costs, the building becomes like a wounded deer in the herd. The scavengers know its days are numbered, and they won't stop watching it until it makes a misstep. In the case of large residential buildings, corporations are the only entities with the investment power to cover the costs of a building that's falling apart. That is why, when neighbors from other buildings or citizens report the poor condition of the defective building, or when the city council intervenes due to failure to meet basic safety or health standards, then the owners become more receptive to offers for their apartments. They would rather sell than face being forced by the authorities to pay for the repairs or be evicted from their homes. At this point, the strategy is like this. Investors will make offers to all the owners, and even if only a portion of them sell their apartments to the corporation, this corporation will already have a seat on the homeowners association. If they manage to acquire a relative majority of the units, they will have significant decision-making power within the community, giving them more leverage to negotiate future purchases of their remaining units. Then, slowly but surely, the Vulture Fund will make over the entire building. But let's not view them as the villains. These companies are necessary for our cities. If you think about it, the residents had years to maintain their building, and they didn't. Now that they can't afford it, these corporations are the only ones capable of taking on the cost of these crumbling buildings. Without them, our cities would become filled with structural skeletons where no one wants to live.
What can we do?
1. Minimum maintenance of your property. Maintaining your property isn't just about aesthetics, it's about protecting the value of your investment and the community around you. Ignoring facade maintenance doesn't just make your home look shabby, it sets the tone for the entire neighborhood. When one property falls into disrepair, it drags others down, creating a spiral of neglect. It's like nominating your street for the ugliest in town award every day. 2. Address critical issues immediately. Structural issues like plumbing problems, underground dampness, or roof leaks must be addressed as soon as they appear, otherwise they only grow bigger, exponentially so. What starts as a small inconvenience can quickly snowball into a major financial drain, devouring the value of your home. 3. Community maintenance matters. For those living in communities, remember that common areas and shared structures need prompt attention. The challenge here is getting everyone on board. Let's say your building needs a $200,000 repair. With 20 homeowners, that's $10,000 each. If the community president can't convince everyone to pitch in, or if some residents refuse or can't afford to pay, the problem is left to worsen. Next time a vote is called, it could be for an even higher amount. This pattern is the beginning of the end, pushing the building closer to irreversible damage and devaluation. 4. Keep your building up to date with regulations. Finally, keeping up with regulations is crucial. Government regularly update laws, labeling older buildings as unsafe or unhealthy. While not all regulations are enforced retroactively, some impact the market value and might even come with state subsidies for improvements. Neglecting these updates can lead to a gradual devaluation. Remember, there are only two types of houses: those that are profitable and those destined for ruin. Conclusion: think of maintaining your house like taking care of a child. If the authorities see that you are not providing the essentials, safety, cleanliness, and upkeep, they have every right to step in. If you let your home fall into disrepair, it's almost like losing custody. The government in this case, or the market, will decide that someone else, perhaps less sentimental but more practical, will take over. Money certainly plays a role. With enough funds, you can access better services, healthier environments, and top-notch professionals who can make your problems vanish for the next 20 years. But let's be clear, wealth alone doesn't guarantee good choices. There are wealthy people who, out of negligence or stubbornness, refuse to maintain their properties properly, and that's their right. The real question is, are you willing and able to invest in your home's future? Are you prepared to pay for quality maintenance that keeps your home from falling apart over the next couple of decades? Only then will your piece of paradise be safe from the real estate vultures circling above. What do you think about this topic? Do you have neighbors neglecting or not doing everything what they can to keep the maintenance? Let me see your comments below. See the big picture and keep thinking forward.